Welcome to another episode of Teaching Your Child podcast series, where we gather each time to help ourselves feel a little less crazy in our homeschooling journey. We really appreciate all of our listeners who tune in each time we release one of these to laugh with us, to laugh at us as we grow and learn about podcasting. We appreciate you passing us on to your friends and helping us grow, because without you guys, there would not be the movement of daring to be a different teacher. And we really, really appreciate it. Much like Andrew Jackson did in 1829, he abandoned his official cabinet members, where he normally got his advice from the appointed people, and he sought advice from his unofficial friends, called his kitchen cabinet. Well, we're bringing you a new podcast series, a little bit different. Nathan's up in Alaska working hard away the last 3 months. It's just going to be me, Nicole, this time. Hopefully he'll join us in another few podcast series as he finally makes it back. But we're bringing you Kitchen Table Talk. This is our kitchen table of current means, where we sit and have coffee, because this is the hub of the home. This is where ideas are grown and exchanged, movements are started. And so we're bringing you this Kitchen Table Talk series. It's all about what teachers do, how they do it, what other moms do, how they do it. And we're asking the question, how do you teach? So we came across 3 astonishing facts. And the first one would be 20 years ago, the good old U.S. was the leading country in education. And now we're 18th out of 23 industrial countries. Way down at the bottom of the barrel, people. 6 million students, grades 7 to 12, public and private schools, of course. They, by of course, I mean that's where the statistics are coming from, because it's just statistics aren't typically drawn from homeschool families. It's kind of hard to get us all to answer to surveys. But so grades 7 to 12, those kids, 6 million of them, they struggle to read at level. 70% of 8th graders read below the standard level. Third fact, 14% of new teachers resign within their first year. 33% resign by their 3rd year. 50% resign by their 5th year. The turnover rate is astounding for teachers going into the system nowadays. More and more people are growing in homeschooling. It's becoming less of the weird and more of the, yeah, I think that's something that's okay to do. And, that's a great place to be. It is a movement that is starting. Whether you are public school teachers listening, private school teachers listening, we want to help you at TYC. We want to help you guys grow to be a different teacher, grow to be a daring teacher. And us homeschooling parent teachers who've been our listeners for a while, we think that we can reach across the aisle, so to speak, and learn what other teachers are doing. So in this series of Kitchen Table Talk, we're going to be talking to teachers and moms, like we said. It's not all pretty. There's a lot of hard stuff that's heard, but I think that it can really minister to each of us. So without further ado, this is our Teaching Teachers podcast. And our first victim, no, I'm just kidding. She was very happy to do it. This is Elizabeth Morey from Alaska, the great state up north, our last free territory. And I know it's a state, guys. I'm just saying it's a territory, but you know what I mean, I hope. And if not, that's okay. I don't think I always know what I mean sometimes. But anyways, Elizabeth Morey hails from Alaska. She has been teaching public school for 9 years. She has taught everything from grades kindergarten, 2nd grade, I'm looking at my notes, 4th grade and 5th grade. Of the 9 years, 5 of those years she's taught her favorite, which is 2nd grade. And she's going to bring us news of her typical days, what her methods are, her curriculum, her passion for reading. Elizabeth, usually, the state of Alaska does not have a cap of students that are allowed in a classroom. So she'll see anywhere from 24 to 27 kids by herself, no teacher's aid, each year. All right, so we're playing with some new software this time with some phone recording software, and there's a lot of feedback that comes across. I think it's from her cell phone moving, because we're calling her on a landline, and so I think when her cell phone moves into range, it kind of gives that terrible feedback noise. Elizabeth comes across great, clean, and crisp. Unfortunately, my voice is kind of muffled, so just, another one of those learning things, but you guys are such a forgiving audience. We really appreciate it. So here we go. Without further ado, Elizabeth's interview.
Okay, my name is Elizabeth Morey. I am a teacher and proud of it. I started teaching because I enjoyed working with kids, and I needed a job that paid money, and I had a young son who the job would accommodate him. So, and after working for a while, I realized this profession was really for me, and I enjoyed it. I think I enjoy it a little too much.
So you've been teaching 9 years now, right?
Yes, it will be 9 years, and I think coming on my 10th year.
Oh, wow. And then you've taught the whole time in the great state of Alaska.
Yes, ma'am.
So what is that like? What are the qualifications for an Alaskan teacher? What does that entail to get hired on as a teacher? Like, what does your background need to be?
As a teacher up here, it's very similar to educationally wise. You have to have the same things as what you do in other states. You have to have a bachelor's degree and be highly qualified. And highly qualified is taking tests called praxis tests for up here. Some states have their own testing that grades the teacher as being highly qualified. And you can get endorsements to teach different subjects. At my district, you have to go through a hiring process where you're interviewed by the district, and you're scored, and then from there, principals can interview you and place you within the schools. There are always special circumstances where they'll allow somebody to teach if they don't have a bachelor's, but I think it's like construction education, where they hire somebody who's from the field to come in and teach. It's very rare that they do that, but they do have some flexibilities where they allow that stuff. Or business teachers at the high school level, where they need teachers of certain concentrations.
What is your passion for teaching? In second grade, you're kind of introducing all the subjects to the kids, but what's your area of passion?
I really love teaching them to read and, fostering that love for reading and learning, and just they're so excited about life, and at this age level, you can really get them to enjoy what they're reading and talk about it, and just go home and tell their parents about it all excited. I'll have parents come in and say, oh, they really enjoyed talking about this, and I'm like, oh, good. That's my favorite part.
So what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, in the morning, the students come in, they sit down, and they do a quiet morning work while everybody is coming in and getting ready. This provides transition time where I can take attendance, I can do my teacher thing, talk to the kids, see how their night went, or if they have something to tell me. And then we get started with our reading block. And within our reading block, we have our core reading program, which is the program that our district provides us with that says, this is the program you have to teach to the kids. And then from there, we do small groups and grammar also. We teach grammar during that time. And then we go to lunch and recess, teach math. And specials. Specials is where they go to another classroom for PE, music, and library. And I have my prep time to get ready for the day or the week or whatever I need to do. And then they come back and we finish with writing.
When you're like planning for your school year, how do you set about doing that? How do you determine, because each year you're going to have a new different group of kids and new different abilities and things like that. So how do you kind of take me through that process that you go through at the beginning of the year to the end of the year?
Okay, so usually what I set the year, I have an overarching theme usually with the years. I haven't picked out my theme this year. Last year was friendship, and there's just various themes. And then I connect it to the stories, and I've taught the stories plenty of times, so I know what's expected. It's a little harder when you're starting a new curriculum to have an overarching theme unless you know this stuff in and out. And you're like, well, this works well with this stuff or this topic right here or this concept. And from there, I have a quarterly plan that hits the big concepts that I work with throughout the year. And that one I really like working with because it not only helps myself, but it helps me to plan like extra activities. Like let's say I want to have a presenter come in and talk about we have a unit on around the town, and around the town has a unit on banks and city hall and police officers and community members. And during that time, knowing that, I can plan ahead and say, well, this is what I want to do to enrich their learning in that sense. Then so I also use that to help plan assessments and make sure that they're ready for third grade. And then from there, I have a weekly assessment that I will set up and do each week. I know the curriculum in and out, so sometimes my weekly, or not, did I say assessment? I meant weekly lesson plans. Sorry. So I set up the weekly lesson plans, and I go by. I actually don't look at them at all after I write them out because I know them in and out after teaching them for so long. It's the curriculum's just in the back of my head. The only time I need to look at the lesson plans is if I'm doing a new curriculum. And that's the great thing about after teaching the same thing for a couple of years or being familiar with the curriculum, you know it fairly well. So I use the daily lesson plans, and I set that up weekly.
So when you're setting up like objectives for your students, do you know anything about your kiddos before they come in? Do you kind of know what level that they are and what level you want to take them to, or?
No, they walk in our door, and we know kind of a little bit. I can pull up test scores from last year about them. I can go talk to their teachers, but really I don't like to talk to other teachers. I like to give them a fresh start at second grade because they do so much growing, and I find that developmentally this is the year that they take off. Mm-hmm. And I try not to taint my mind with their past experiences, because sometimes teachers will say, oh, that student, he was a rough one. You be careful with him. Now, if I'm experiencing problems with the child, I will go talk to the teacher previously and just get an input of what they have encountered with the child. But what I do is I spend the first 2 weeks assessing the students, getting to know them, finding out what they like, what their interests are, who they are as people. You know, are they hard workers? Are they a child, you just need to push a little bit, to get them where they need to go. Or So I take that 2 weeks to get to know them, and they need to get to know me too, to respect me. It doesn't come instantly with the whole respect. So,
So, like, do you have to set up kind of modeling behaviors and like what to expect from Miss Morey? This is how Mrs. Morey's classroom works, and everybody's kind of feeling each other out. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly. I do. I spend a lot of time going over expectations and how to behave in a classroom. Yes, I do.
So you're determining objectives kind of cumulatively for your whole group, right? Collectively as students. But then, are there also certain individual students that you kind of look at and say, okay, this one's going to be a little bit behind, so these are my separate objectives for them, and this is ones that are ahead, and these are separate objectives for them? Or
yes, I do that. We have a process called RTI. That's called Response to Intervention. This is for the low guys. Now, there is lots of research available on the internet that people can look up and refer to if they're encountering problems. And the great thing about the RTI process is you take and you say, well, this child is struggling with this topic. Well, this is what I think this is what I think is going to help them be successful. So you put together, this is what I do during small groups, is I say, well, little Tommy and Sue, if they're on the same level, they're struggling with fluency. And I want them to be at, 30 words per minute by the end of 8 weeks. And I think using this program will help them achieve that. So for 6 weeks, I will implement 30 minutes 4 or 5 times a week, however long the program says that will be successful. And then at the end of that 6 weeks, I will look back on it, look at the data, and if they are making progress, I will continue with it. If they are not making progress, I will revisit my goals for them and revisit the curriculum and use something completely different. Now, once we have done this cycle twice, I will take it to we have building representatives that will help us if it's not being successful in class. We say, hey, we've done these 2 cycles of 6 weeks of different types of programs. This child's not learning. How do we help them? Because every kid is different at learning, and it might just be something as simple as changing it to a different thing or having a smaller group to help them succeed. And a lot of the kids are caught during that RTI process and having to go back and just revisiting those subjects. It sends them, it helps them from being lost within the cracks. And then for those higher kids, I tend to make learning goals based on project where they're using higher level thinking, and they have to apply their knowledge, what they already know. So let's say they have this learning goal right here. I will make them apply it versus having different learning goals. I don't have learning as the other kids, but I'm making them apply it. So it's a different cognitive level that they're doing it on versus giving them a new learning goal. I make them do it a different way, and it takes their learning to a higher level. The Bloom taxonomy, or I can't say it right now, my brain's Bloom.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Bloom's, using that, having them do it in a different way, it makes it fun. They enjoy it, like doing a research project, or how would you apply this to real life? So.
Okay, so that's a great way to just keep everybody kind of on the same track, but you can push the other ones that are ready to move along just by moving them through that 6 levels of taxonomy?
Mhm.
Okay. And then everybody still feels collectively like we're learning the same thing, but, we're each working on different parts.
Yes, and see, what I found is I've had kids that were really gifted, and I gave them a different curriculum thinking, oh, this kid needs to be advanced. And I found that they lost interest in what they were doing. They wanted to be a part of the class. They didn't want to be different.
Mhm.
And I feel like if they are learning about the same things, but they're learning about it in a different way, they get excited about it. They enjoy it. They're motivated to learn about it. And I really feel like that motivation is so important, because otherwise they don't learn.
When you were talking about your group, how do you level your group? Do you put everybody the same level in one group, or do you kind of mix that up?
How do I level my groups? I will take and base it off of their scores. We have different types of assessments we use. We use Ames Web, which is a fluency test, and that tests their ability to read words per minute. In 2nd grade, we do words per minute, and in other grades, in younger grades, they do nonsense fluency, letter naming, and I also use MAP assessment, which scores their overall academic progress in reading, and it also does it in math and language arts. And MAP stands for Measurements of Academic Progress. And I also look at their abilities in class, because you can't completely rely on assessments. You need to look at the whole picture. I'm all about balance and whole picture.
So to develop that picture, do you keep portfolios on each student kind of individually, or?
Kind of. It's kind of a big binder that holds everybody in it. And
class binder, and then you divide it
by student, and then I will take my lower kids and put them in a group, and then I have usually my kids that are on the cusp of being benchmark, is what I like to call them. That's at grade level where their peers are, and I will have that group where they are benchmark, or they have the potential of falling below, but they also have the potential of being benchmark, and I focus on those kids also, because they are the ones that you can move, and sometimes they surprise you and be high.
Mhm.
And it's at this grade level, it's really developmental, because it's like at a certain time they click and then they take off. It's amazing.
Okay.
They go from reading 30 words per minute at the beginning of the year to over 100 words per minute. So that's like a 70-word gain throughout the year. And that's pretty amazing, because other grade levels, it's only like 10, 20 words per minute. But here, you see the results, and you're like, wow, I'm pretty awesome. I'm a teacher.
So tell me, what kind of teaching style do you use in the classroom?
I am an explicit teaching style. I'm thinking a better way to say it. I like to explicitly teach students. Some may call that direct instruction, but I like to give the kids the information and them give it back to me. So, for example, I do, we do, you do. I do, we do, you do is my philosophy with teaching. And now, sometimes with the I do, I'm spending a lot of time talking to them. Now, when we do it, we all do it together with me. And then when it gets to you do, the students that's the time when I do collaborative work where they're working with their partners, and it might mesh in with the we do also. But you really need to balance it out, but I weigh more on the explicit side of instruction. But you have to remember it's second grade where they're receiving a lot of information. Now, if it's in the older grades, they need more of the I do or you do, and more of the collaborative work. And I've noticed the difference when I was in the older grades to second grade is I enjoy actually doing cooperative learning up there. But in second grade, I don't, because there's so much information they need to get, and they don't taking it in as much, in my experience with my style of teaching, with the cooperative learning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every teacher is different, and not everything works for everybody, but this is what works for me.
So with direct instruction, it's like you're, just to clarify for those that are out there, not some of our listeners that aren't completely familiar with those terms, that's just what you typically think of in a teaching school. Like the teacher's up at front and she's giving all the information, and then the kids are on the receiving end of it, right?
Yes, kids are listening to the teacher as she talks, and then the students, I will intermingle I'm up front, they are saying it with me, and then they're doing it. It's just like a constant pass through it. I do, we do, you do. And it's so imperative that there is explicit instruction with students, because they just can't explore everything and learn everything on their own. It has to be balanced. There always has to be everything incorporated into that. And
do you think that's because second graders, they're not that strong of a reader yet, and so a lot of things are kind of having to be, at first you have to bring that reading skill up quite a bit, don't you?
Yes. There's a lot of instruction. I mean, just like we will dictate words or we'll blend words together still. And that's a lot of I do, and then they do, we do, and then they do by themselves. And they need a lot of that still.
Yeah. What books have you read, or things that you find invaluable in teaching that through the years of, it's almost a decade now, so.
Yeah. When I was back in my college days, I read a book called, our instructor made us read Mem Fox's book. She's an Australian lady. She's written several magical children's books. I love all of her books. I would read them to my son. Very creative. And Reading Magic is what the book was called. It is a very short, quick, entertaining read. And it talks about the impact of reading aloud to kids. And it really helps parents realize, and it also helps teachers to realize the impact of the joy of reading. Because I can remember back when I was younger, I didn't like reading very much, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Ooh, I love reading," because something caught my interest, and I realized books, they can take you places, and you can go to these magical places that you've never been, and you can stay in your living room. And that book made a huge impact on me, because it's important to foster that love of reading in kids, because everything they're going to do in life will have to require them to read.
Yeah.
If
it's a life skill. Yeah.
Yes, it is a life skill. And if you can get them to enjoy it, it makes their life so much easier. And that's my goal, is to make their life easier as they become an adult.
Yeah.
So that's why that book was, there's lots of books out there, and there's lots of good books, but that's the one that made the most impact on me.
So, let me ask you, personally, you have 2 children, and your oldest is going into 4th grade, right?
5th grade.
5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, it's been a while since I've seen you. 5th grade. So, do you still read aloud to him?
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
And he actually loves it when I do. I don't read to him as much. It's more of him doing the reading now. And but you can still impact those kids, and they love listening to read alouds. And I would read them to my 4th graders. I taught 4th grade 2-3 years back, and the kids love the read alouds.
Yeah.
Even if it's a chapter book, it doesn't have to be a picture book, and it models how to read a book aloud. It models how to enjoy it, and it also provides family time that it's often stolen away by these electronics that we have nowadays.
That's the end of segment 1 with Elizabeth. Just to clarify a few things with you guys, after the interview, I had a few questions of my own, and when she talks about the core curriculum, the state of Alaska hasn't yet adopted the Common Core objectives. I think it's on the docket to do so, but the curriculum the state uses is very closely tied to those objectives. And as far as specials go, that actually differs from day to day and week to week. They don't do art, music, and PE every day. That's going to vary a lot. And history, science, and social studies, they do teach. They just add those in at their special units, kind of a smattering of it, and then they try to get to it on Friday afternoons as well. When she brought up her reading aloud story, it reminded me of the story of when a memory, not a story, but a memory of when I was in college. At the very end, we would have a check-in day with our professor, and he would read aloud to us these children's books. We're a group of 20 to 40-year-olds, completely captivated by the children's books that he would bring out and read with voices and animations, and it was just the greatest time. I don't think that ever leaves anyone to be read aloud to. I think we always enjoy that. We enjoy narration as a species as a whole, and so think about that when you get to your older kids. Remember that they may act like they don't need you, but they do. They still want you to read aloud and use funny voices. I don't know if you guys can hear this, but Isis is over here having a dream, so I'm gonna wake her up. Isis, it's okay. You got the bone. When we talk about Bloom's taxonomy, old Ben, he really wanted to change education, and he had this conference to really connect educators and curriculum, and he had 6 domains of cognitive skills, and he defined them as 3 objectives, which would have been the cognitive, also known as the knowing mind, the affective with an A, the feeling heart, and the psychomotor, which are doing hands. And he wanted to take these 3 objectives, or these 6 domains, and kind of think of it as a ladder. If you were to go up the first rung, you'd have knowledge on up to evaluation. And the theory is that higher level learning comes from attaining the prerequisite knowledge at the lower levels. Different teachers will interpret how this theory is achieved, and most believe that one level has to be understood before moving on. And Elizabeth talks about that with the younger kids, using the lower levels, that knowledge and comprehension level, and then moving up through the ladder with her higher group levels, ability level groups that she has. If you've taken our courses, you know that we at 2IC, we kind of disagree with that. We're a little bit different. We're a lot different than other kind of conventional wisdom. And we teach in our courses that regardless of ability level, that your lessons and your teaching should move through all 6 domains. We kind of interpret that theory that Ben came up with as a holistic approach. So, but hey, that's just us. So back to segment 2 with Elizabeth Morey. And in this segment, we're going to get to hear kind of her ideology in teaching and her views of what she views as vital and the crux and changeable things of education. And we ask her what she feels is the hardest about teaching. I think she'll surprise you. She certainly surprised us with her answer. But, the thing about second grade teachers, I think if anyone was going to see where our society and our culture is going, it's definitely a second grade teacher. She deals with that on a whole daily basis. So without further ado, here we go, segment 2.
What do you see as the vital part of teaching that teachers should learn or do? We talked about reading aloud to our students, but what other things do you think are essential for a teacher to know to do?
I think that, are you referring to like courses to take?
Whatever you see as just the crux. I mean, it could be courses or it could be in the classroom.
The most impact that I've had on my teaching is taking brain-based learning courses or understanding. You don't even have to take the courses. You could read books on it or read articles on it. There's lots of articles out there if you're not able to take courses. But having that brain-based learning knowledge about what type of learning things, there's certain techniques that you can do within your teaching that will increase the learning tenfold. Like, for example, this is a brain-based learning technique, is where I have the kids, I say, or it's a definition, I tell them what the definition is, and I make them repeat it to me several times. And then after we repeated it several times, maybe like 3 times, I will pick somebody out and I'll ask them to say it, and then I'll say it whole group, and then I'll pick somebody else. And this is very quick, and I'll give them short definitions so that they can remember the vocabulary word. And then I will also switch it around, where I'll say the definition and have them say the word. So when they hear the definition, they know it's the vocabulary word. That is brain-based, that technique right there. Yeah. And there are several of them out there that does it. And then also, if they hear it, say it, and see it, and they write it, they will be more likely to remember it.
Yeah.
So there is different techniques with that. So
your goal with that, I mean, that's one of my loves is brain-based learning theories and reading up on that. And what you're talking about is just kind of engaging different hemispheres, right? So you're looking at it, you've got your visual, you're hearing it, you've got your auditory, and then when you talk about writing, that's your movement, right?
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what's the hardest thing about teaching?
What did I? Hold on. Most people ask me that question. They're like, "Oh, what's the hardest thing about teaching?" And I look at them and I say, they expect me to say parents. I'm like, parents aren't that bad. Honestly, I mean, if you know how to talk to people, parents aren't bad. And if they know that you have the best interest in their child, they're not. I find that social skills are a big issue, especially with today's kids. There's a lot of lacking of it because of the fact that us as a community, we're not raising our kids as it takes a village to raise a kid is the concept. Well, we're going away from that. We're very individualized, and we stay to our family. And it's more of you need to, when you're hanging out with your friends, you do need to teach your child. And a lot of times our culture is like, no, we're not going to tell our friend's kid that they shouldn't be climbing on the table because they let their kid climb on the table. Well, sometimes parents are too exhausted to say, hey, stop climbing on the table because their kid does it all the time and they're exhausted as a parent. So we get these kids in here that the parents are working tremendous hours, or they're super busy with their life, they're stressful, or they're stressed out, and there's these kids that don't know how to behave in school. And that can cause a lot of issues because I'm having to take a lot of time to teach them that stuff. Or well, I've learned I've had to teach them that stuff because otherwise they don't have success like I like.
Yeah. I have to say I'm completely taken aback. I really didn't think that you were going to say social skills. That's really interesting that
we need to take responsibility for our community, our friends, and just say we don't act like that right here, and tell them why or redirect them, because it's exhausting being a parent. It really is, and you cannot teach them everything they need. You need a mom, you need a dad, you need a grandma, you need a grandpa, uncles, aunts, friends that help teach the children. That's why, like in Native cultures, they send their boys, in some Native cultures, they send their boys to the uncle during a certain amount of time so they can teach them their family ways because they know they won't learn from their parents.
Mhm.
There's something missing in our society, and I don't know if it's the electronics because we're going to the stage where we're all sitting on our phone and we're not being parents, or if the kids are just too absorbed with it, or we're just so busy with our own lives. And it really affects everything. It affects the classroom. It affects our jails. It affects our workforce. It affects everything.
Mhm. When you have incorrigible learners in your classroom, how do you deal with those types of kids? The ones that just flat out refuse to learn. Maybe, and they're being rude in the classroom, and take me through that process. Big sigh.
So those kids are usually kids that are lacking the social skills. So I take and I say, okay, what behaviors am I having issues with? What times of the day am I having issues with them? How often? What situations bring on this behavior? So I really dissect what the behavior is. It's not like, oh, this kid annoys me all day. No, I look at this child interrupts my teaching this many times a day at this time of the day because of this type of learning. So I really get down and I look at that, how and when and where and why they are doing that. Then I teach them. I pre-teach them in a non-confrontational or a confrontational time. So basically, when they're not getting in trouble, I pre-teach them, okay, this is how we behave, and I might do a whole group because a lot of the times there's other kids that need those skills anyways, and it's good to review them all.
Yeah.
So I review it with all of them, and then if it continues, I'll review it on an individual stage. And then if it continues, I will look at other sources such as a behavior rewards chart. So the whole providing them with a reward if they do a good job. And a lot of the kids you can motivate them with depending on what they like. One year last year, I had a kid who liked donuts. I would bring him a donut in. And it was actually for him to get to school on time because he would fight his mother about coming to school. So I would help his mother by saying, hey, if you come to school and you have a good attitude, I will bring you a donut in 5 days. And he, sure enough, would come to school and have a good attitude. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So, and then there's always the cases where it won't work. And at that time, you need to get help from outside. You need support. Outside meaning outside of the classroom, and there's support within the building with the other teachers, the principal, and whatnot.
Mhm.
So.
Well, what do you see as the crux of education right now?
Testing.
No, no.
But it's like a double-edged sword. And the reason why I say that is because you need it, But then it just becomes so big and just so over controlling and just in your face. But it's important because people need accountability, but it's just like there's this balance that I don't feel like we have yet. Maybe someday we will, maybe someday we won't. But yes, that's the issues that I see right now.
So how much time would you say, truthfully, do you spend toward testing?
Friday afternoon or Friday morning I do all my testing. So once a week I spend a morning testing. Then we spend 3 times a year a morning testing for our Ames web testing. Then for our MAP testing we spend 3 class days for our 3 half days testing 3 times a week or 3 times a year. So that's 3 days, 3 times a year, half days. Now, and during those 3 weeks, we cannot use the computer lab. And computer lab I incorporate that into my learning or my learning time with my students, so it can be troublesome during that 3 weeks. So that testing messes it up. Oh, but then don't forget the 5th graders and 4th graders and 3rd graders test for a whole week to do state testing. So
is there do your lessons, I'm trying to think of how to formulate this question, do your lessons, are they based around that upcoming test, or do you not that, do you just test when it comes and you don't worry about teaching to that test?
I do not. The curriculum is, no curriculum is ever 100%. So as a teacher, I guess that's why we have a teaching license. It's just like it's an artist license. Curriculum, you have your curriculum, and it's never foolproof for any student. You have to, some years students will have a lot of knowledge in one area, so you won't have to teach as much in that area. The next year, the kids might have less knowledge, so you're going to have to supplement. And supplement meaning you're going to have to look at the learning goals and say, hey, are they getting everything that they need? Do they need extra stuff here? Or do they need less stuff here? So in essence, yes, you're teaching them the tests because you know what they're going to be tested on. You know what their learning goals are going to be. So you have the curriculum. You know that if you teach it from A to Z, they'll get most of the stuff. But if you want them to do really well, you're going to go above and beyond. And you know that first year teaching, you want to teach it from A to Z and try to throw the extra stuff in, but you don't want to overwhelm yourself with it. Just for those newer teachers. Yeah. Because you can't do everything in the first year. You can't.
So would you say a first-year teacher's goal would be to what? What was the goal?
Teach the curriculum. Teach it with fidelity. Don't change it up. Because you don't have that knowledge of what they need. I mean,
so what would happen if all the kids in your class failed, or a high percentage of kids failed in your class?
I would take and say, what am I doing wrong? And I would reteach it.
Is there ramifications from your superiors, or?
They are in the process of implementing that right now, where if a teacher does not have success in their class, or actually a percentage of their success of their kids will be incorporated in their evaluation. And if it is continuously a problem, they may not be rehired even if they're tenured.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there's a definite teeth coming down.
Yes, just recent stuff. We don't know how it'll look right now, honestly, but...
Do you think there's ever a dichotomy between how the kids are doing in the class and how they do on the test?
Wait, what was that? Sorry.
So is there ever like a large difference between how the kids are doing in the classroom opposed to how they do on the test? Like, do you ever have kids that do really well in class and do really bad on tests?
I've only had, there's usually one student a year that will be like that. And I think, honestly, that they're really smart. It's just tests scare them, or they go through it too fast. But as a whole in my class, no, I don't have that issue at all. Because I actually teach the curriculum and I enrich it as needed. But there's always that one student. I mean, not everybody's the same. Everybody learns different. Every year I have one student who's a really, really good reader. Or no, not a really good reader, a really good speller, but horrible at reading fluency, words per minute. And I'm like, but they spell so good, but they read so slow. How is that? I mean, it's just everybody's a little different. Like their brain in certain areas are stronger than others, which is very plausible. So,
how would you change it? How would you said that the tests are necessary, but you feel like it takes too much time. So how would you do it differently? If you were in charge, wave that magic wand.
I would voila! All the kids are smart. No. I would probably look at consolidating the tests. And they are in the process of doing that right now. Supposedly the week-long tests that they're doing, they're going to be looking at doing it a little different and taking away certain tests and possibly taking away that test that we have to do 3 times a year. So that being said, is consolidating them to one, or you know what I mean? It's just not having as many tests.
Right, that makes sense.
And not having so much stress with it, but it's really a double-edged sword, because you need the accountability, because there's people that need that. They need to be told that they have to do certain things. They have to have a certain point they have to hit. For me, it's troublesome because I know I hit it. So it's just for those people that don't.
Yeah. So as we wrap it up here, you've been so patient and helpful. My last question to you would be, what is it that you want us, our listeners, to just kind of gain from your teaching experiences? Like, what's that, if you could sum it up, what's the thing that you want to impart to everyone?
What I really want everybody to know is that as teaching is, it can have its troubles, it can have its joys, but the most important things is to make the children love learning. They need that. You need to make sure that they are enthused about it, because if you lose them, you're going to lose them forever, and they're not going to like learning. They're not going to be successful in life. If they're excited about learning now, if they enjoy what they do, they will continue with that. Don't take that enthusiasm away from them, or make sure you foster it. And if you're noticing kids not enjoying learning, then think about, well, what can I do differently? Not what you're doing wrong, but what can I do differently? You got to think of it like that.
Yeah.
And make sure they love learning, and that will help them be successful in life, because that's the all-end goal of school, is to make sure that they are adults that can be successful, productive people in our community. This is our community we're building right here. Mm-hmm. We need to help grow that.
Well said. Well said. Well, I really appreciate all your time, Elizabeth.
You're welcome, Nicole.
And that wraps up our interview with Elizabeth Morey from Alaska. Just to throw a couple figures out at you guys, at the end she's talking about testing a lot. And so you get the idea that more than 20% of her school year is dedicated toward testing. That's 42 days out of the 180. I think Elizabeth truly hits the nail on the head when she says that all of this testing is becoming just too oppressive and that we need to consolidate and look at some changes. I love her philosophy that comes through. It really resonates with us at TYC. That's creating lifelong learners as our goal, regardless of what kind of educator we are. Mom, private, public, whatever it is, we want to have kids that love learning. So if you like what you hear, want to hear some more episodes that are just like this, a little shorter, a little longer, some of them, go to www.teachingyourchild.net, and on our podcast page you'll see that, plus show notes that go with it. If you want some visual components to go with your podcasting and see some other videos on teaching, just click on over on our video page that's available right there on the homepage. If you have questions or comments about an episode or just in general with teaching, we want you to connect with us, so reach out. We've made it super easy. We've got social media buttons all over the website. We have a contact page. You can fill out a form or send us emails, shoot us a Skype message. We're there for you guys. We want to help you join our growing teachers who dare to be different. While you're there on that homepage, you can subscribe for free, and when you do that, we are going to send you updates and newsletters, kind of like the know it before it happens. You know, you'll have your finger on the pulse before it comes out. We like to treat our subscribers first. So, again, that's www.teachingyourchild.net. If you click on our products page, you'll find downloads, free downloads, and you'll find books that we have on teaching available, as well as our big course that has over 3 hours of lectures, and 17 of those lectures are divided up into helping you create a zest for lifelong learning in your students. That's our course, Those That Can Teach Their Children. Well, that's it, guys. It was another great podcast. I really appreciate all of you who tune in and listen to us, and keeping Teaching Your Child going and keeping that movement of growing teachers who dare to be different. Because without you guys, we wouldn't be here. So remember, messy houses, kitchen tables full of books, that means children are learning. Have a great day.